I'm just going to start the recording now.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Chuck Tirone, Reading's Conservation Administrator, pursuant to legislation superseding certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, related to the COVID-19 emergency. The July 26th, 2023 public meeting of the Reading Conservation Commission shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. The meeting shall instead be held virtually using Zoom. Please note that this meeting will be recorded. All materials are available at the following link, which I will provide right now. Martha Moore, the commission chair, will facilitate this meeting. Please note that there will be a public comment period at the end of each hearing. Each vote taken during tonight's meeting will be conducted by roll call. We will begin with roll call attendance. And then Martha will continue on and go over the agenda. And I'll just start right here. Martha, can you please conduct the roll call to confirm that all members are present and that they can hear, and then review tonight's agenda?
Okay, I'm calling this meeting to order at 7:06. And roll call, please answer when I call on you, and this will be the order in which we vote with our roll call votes. Brian.
Rainbow, Vice Chair, present.
Tony.
Tony Rodolakis, present.
Bill.
Bill McCants, member, present.
Walter.
Walter Talbot, member, present.
Okay, and I'm Martha Moore, Chair. And our agenda hopefully will be short tonight, and we'll be able to keep it rolling along. We are not going to hear from 0 Small Lane. We will hear from 16 Beverly, 31 Wilson, 7 Heritage. We have a certificate of compliance for 123 Lila. We will not hear from 10 Plymouth Road. And that's about it. Some old new business and regulation discussion we may actually have time for, and minutes for approval if everyone has read them. Okay. Do you need anything else, or can I start in, Chuck?
Sure, you can start right in on the agenda and 0 Small Lane with a continuance. Okay,
and do we have to vote on that?
Yes, we do. This is new, yeah.
All right, 0 Small Lane has asked to continue to August 9th. Is there someone who will make a motion to that effect, please?
I make a motion to continue 0 Small Lane to August 9th.
Okay.
Second.
All right, voting.
Rainbow, in favor.
I vote in favor.
Bill McCants, in favor.
Walter Talbot, in favor.
Martha Moore, in favor. Okay. The next one is 16 Beverly, and I see that Jeb is on the call, so I will read the blurb while Chuck gets everybody set up. Let me get to the blurb. There we go. Continue the public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Jeb Pitzinger pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1, for installation of a single-car garage with an accessory apartment, retaining wall. All of the work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed on the Conservation Division page under the current project Assessor's Map 31, Lot 36, DEP file number 270-0772. Okay.
Hi, Jeb. I know you updated some of the material. Do you want to present anything on the screen, or just run us through what you have, your updates.
Sure. I'll share my screen here. Let me know when you can see that.
I see it.
We can.
Okay, excellent. Three things were resubmitted for my project. The first is a revised variance. Within the variance, I've just highlighted the changes in red for it would be easier for the commission to review. So the first one was just the secondary retaining wall we spoke about at the last time I was discussing. And the second part is, I'm sorry, excuse me, just for one moment. Apologize, I'm a single parent tonight. The second part of it was the commission asked me to put in a couple of parts about invasive plants, removal of invasive plants. I've taken care of that, put that into the variance as a mitigation, and then as well as identifying specific plants that would be planned on being put in, as well as the amount of them. So those are included in here as well. And these are really just plants that are on the recommended list that the commission's posted online. And so that's what that is. I've provided another plan, essentially just showing the location of where I plan on doing invasive species removal. That's in the upper part, which is the hatch line. And then an area where I plan on doing the proposed planting, which is, to my estimation, the area that will be the most impacted, not by the project specifically, but by invasive plant removal, and also the area that has the least amount of vegetation at this moment. And then the final part is that I provided a section here and updated that to show where these invasive species would be removed in and abouts, and then again where the proposed plantings would be. So those are the three additional things that I added at, I believe, satisfy the requests of the commission from our last meeting, and I'll just field any questions.
I'd like to see the list of plants again. It went by pretty quickly.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Okay, and while I have a chance to look at that, are there any members of the commission that have questions or comments? Bill?
Yeah, my comment is brief. Jeb, I just want to say, I found these additions responsive. I appreciated you highlighting them the way you did. It was really helpful with the review. That's my comment. Thank you.
Certainly.
Anybody else, questions or comments? Chuck?
Just the plant list. I think low bush blueberry is more of a dry area plant, so that might be swapped out with something else. If you showed us the area that you were going to propose them, it's pretty close to the groundwater,
It is.
and it might not do well there. It doesn't mean you can't plant it somewhere else that's dry, but that probably should be thought about.
Yeah,
And,
understood.
to piggyback on that, you have the area at the base of the retaining wall, and then you have 10 native bushes or herbaceous plantings in an upland area. Can
Yep.
you review for us where that upland area is?
Certainly. So it's really more likely it's gonna be pretty much right in this. I've got a kind of this infiltration garden, but there'll be plantings in here as well.
Okay, up at the top of the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Anybody else have questions? Okay. Are there any members of the general public here at this meeting who have questions? Jeb, you might want to stop sharing so we can see. And anybody who's here, use the reaction button at the bottom of your screen and click on the raise hand function. Seeing none. Is this a good time to close the discussion on this? Do I have a motion for that? And Chuck, do you see anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
We can close the meeting and then discuss it amongst the commission prior to issuing, our vote for issuing.
Okay. Don't everybody jump at once. I need a motion to close.
This is Bill. I'll make a motion to close the hearing on 16 Beverly Road.
This is Tony. I will second that motion.
And
Rainbow in favor.
Tony, your turn to vote.
Tony Rodolakis votes in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Walter Talbot in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Yeah, and it would be at this time if there were any conditions or discussion without any further input from the applicant or the public that the commission could take that on. If none, then another motion would be appropriate. Do you want to think about conditions, anyone, for this site? Anything
It's
different
been a
than our
while.
typical? Yeah.
Have we talked about soil stockpiling and material stockpiling?
I believe that you can make a condition to keep it as far away from the buffer zone as possible. I think with the can't get out of the buffer zone, and with the project and the house and what little bit of lawn, it's going to be tough to find a spot for it. But as close to the road as possible is what my suggestion would be.
Ryan?
Yeah, another condition, we had talked about removing some of the brush and yard waste down at the bottom of the wall. Just want to be sure we have a condition to cover that.
Okay. What about reviewing the planting for monitoring the planting for a few seasons, if someone wants to take that on?
I'll just say, yeah, I had a question about that. I thought normally we expected a certain survival rate within about a 2-year period, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be 80% is what we usually look for, or what's typical?
What's typical, the commission has been a little all over the place, but what's typical elsewhere is 80% shrub and herbaceous, 100% tree.
Okay, and I'd like to have that as a condition.
Okay.
Because that's consistent with the materials I've reviewed, including the science in this area. I think that's a good way to go.
And do we
Thanks.
want that for 2 years, 80% survival? Or sometimes we've done 3 years.
So just a little background. So vegetation, like invasive removal, mass dot, when they're doing a project, is usually 3 years. Vegetation, like what we're talking about here, is usually 2. Doesn't mean you can't do 3 in some situations. On Main Street, we asked for 5 because it was so important to the project that survived, and that was approved. But so again, we've been all over the place, but typically if you're going to look at, Mass DEP, your Mass DOT, you're going to see 2 and 3. And Tony?
No,
Yes, at one point, we were talking about some type of a lip at the front of the driveway to divert stormwater away from the driveway and away from the backyard. Is that something that we could include?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think that's even an issue with engineering. They usually require some sort of lip at the driveway, and so no road runoff goes down the driveway. That's what you're saying, right? I would assume, yeah.
Jeb, is that going to work for your plans?
Yes, that's consistent with my plan.
Okay.
And unless anyone on the commission objects, I like the idea of going with the 2 years rather than the 3. But if the majority feels otherwise, I'm certainly happy to think that way. So,
I'm good with 2 years, 80% survival, but I'd love to see 3 years invasive removal. Anybody not comfortable with that? I just know I've been pulling garlic mustard in the same part of my yard since, at least 15 years now. So 3 years will help, but it's in order to keep it from coming back, it's not an easy project.
So with the invasive removal, Jeb, just by hand or by a licensed applicator?
Understood.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? So I see 5 conditions: soil and material stockpiling near the road, yard waste removal, 80% survival for 2 years, invasive removal for 3 years, and a lip at the driveway entrance to divert water away from the yard.
And just one added to that, 80% shrub and herbaceous and 100% survival for any trees.
I didn't see any trees on his list.
Okay, well,
There-
that's
there-
probably
there-
why you skipped it.
I thought there were some dogwoods.
Yeah, I thought, didn't want to jump in on that, but
Sorry.
I'll put it in there so if there are dogwoods or something else, it will be covered.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, do we
Great.
have a motion?
this Bill McCants will make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 16 Beverly Road with the conditions as stated.
This is Tony. I second that.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Tony Rotalakis in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Walter Talbot in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. All right,
Sure, and just some parting, thank you, Jeb. Appreciate your patience and the project that you presented to the Conservation Commission. I just want to let you know that there is a 15-day appeal period on notices of intent, and we have 21 days to issue the order.
Understood. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone on the commission.
Yeah.
I appreciate all your
Good
time.
luck.
Alrighty.
Okay. 31 Wilson is our next, and that's, I see that Jessie is here. Is she still here?
Yep, she's here.
Yes, she's here. Okay. So I'll read the blurb and Chuck can get everything set up. 31 Wilson Street. Continue the public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Jessica Boudreau pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1, for demolishing a utility space and installing a concrete frost wall foundation with crawl space and rebuild a modestly enlarged sunroom, adjacent mudroom, and a second floor expansion to the existing bedroom. The project includes a small stair platform, 2 steps, and a rustic patio. All of the work is within a buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed on the Conservation Division page under the current project, Assessor's Map 22, Lot 159, DEP file number 270-0773. Right. Hello, Jessie.
Hi. I don't have that much more to present. I'll just roughly go through what was in the memo that I submitted. I'm trying to pull that up here on my screen and share the screen. Give me a second, technical difficulties over here. Great. So as was presented in the memo, the three things you wanted me to respond to were the little bit more clarified patio design dimensions and the substrate for the paver, as well as a more clearly defined native vegetative strip and specific native list of native plantings for that area. So for the pavers, let me just move this so you can see. Okay. So for the patio paver, the patio, what I've done is I've put dimensions on the patio. Nothing has changed in the patio since it was originally presented in terms of size and area. I have more clearly defined where the permeable paver will be used and where the grid style paver will be used. I'll show that in my plan in a second here. I've given the dimensions of the permeable area, and then I have also provided the two cut sections, both of which are showing a 12-inch recommended depth below the paver. I've also spoken with manufacturers, the installer, and my engineer to verify that that 12 inches was appropriate with no drain underneath, and that information was confirmed. Let me change my screen here and I will show you that plan. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so for the paver patio, I've shown on that it was just a revision to the last overlay sketch that was shown, dimensions added to that with the permeable area defined in the middle with those dimensions as well. Those cut sections are there. Here's the permeable paver that I'll use, and then the grid is staying the same. And then I think that's everything for the patio. The next thing on the list, here's the list of native plantings. I've gone with 3 a ground cover that will basically run along the entire area that I'm adding as new in the back there. And then 1 herbaceous, which is the beard tongue, will run along the full length of the back property line and then kind of extend in. And then there will be a few clusters of these of the gay feather herbaceous as well. And then just so you can see that on the plan. So I've shown where each of those natives will be in the plan. I've made a more clearly defined border that now extends from one side of the property, tying into what's already there all the way across and covers that other corner that I didn't have covered last time. The blue area is where I am proposing let me get the name right here, the beard tongue, and then the ground cover will be in this entire new area, and then these clusters of the other herbaceous gay feather have been defined in the purple zones. And that's all the information I have to present.
Okay. And all of these native plantings are on the list on the conservation website?
So I've looked at the list on the conservation website, and I've also cross-referenced with the Native Land Trust, and they're all on there.
Awesome. Okay. Are there members of the commission that have questions for Jesse? And Jesse, maybe if you stop, oh, Bill has his hand up. Okay. Bill.
It's not so much a question, Jesse, as I wanted to thank you for being so responsive with respect to getting in that vegetation, the ground cover, the herbaceous, and so on, in a way that that covers the entire area adjacent to the resource area, but also that you brought it out, because one thing we'd like to see is if you can't make a wider strip all the way across, there's some compensation. It's still within the area, the buffer zone that we're concerned about, adjacent to the resource area. And the level of detail, additional detail you added, I feel was responsive to what we talked to you about last time. So thank you for that. That's my comment.
I am not actually seeing the other members of the commission, so I can't see if anybody else has their hand.
No one else has their hand up.
Okay,
I had a couple questions after you're finished, Martha.
okay. I don't know why I'm not seeing anything. Is everybody else seeing people?
Yes.
Okay, weird. All right. Okay, anybody else with questions? If not, Chuck.
Sure. Jesse, I just wanted to go over a few things. So on the plan, I was wondering, so I know that you're going to use an excavating company at this point to dig out the permeable paver patio. And I just wanted to make sure that they didn't get too far back and back of the 35-foot line into that 25-foot area. And I was wondering, the erosion control that you're going to use, and to ask you to put up an orange construction fence also, just to highlight that area so no machinery compacts any soil in the back. Is that work with your plans? I don't know if you're planning to grade that out and then replant seed, but was concerned about compaction.
So at this point, I actually haven't confirmed with my excavator that they will be doing that work back there. I probably won't even install the patio for another year. So I think what initially I'm going to have done is just have everything backfilled in. And then I will likely dig that out myself in that area. I am happy to add the orange fence and also use the mulch sock and the silt fence if you prefer that I have it there.
I think I would just say, if you're doing it by hand, obviously it's very controllable and we would need less erosion control.
Right.
And I would have an option for that and for machinery. And then the construction entrance again would really be for the machinery, and if you had that, and I guess if you were digging this area out yourself, you'd have to get rid of the material. Just want you to watch the street on those days that you would work, and then just sweep the street off and make sure that nothing's tracking out into the road. And so that would be the only other condition that I would come up with.
Okay.
And the commission just recently talked about survivability plans, and 80% on the herbaceous and 100% on any trees that are planted. I think that would be the same thing. I'll let them decide whether it's 2 or 3 years or how that breaks down. But I just wanted to mention that as I had the floor for a minute.
Okay.
Anybody on the commission who wishes to speak, please use your raise hand function. Bill.
Yeah, I see no reason not to go with what we discussed at the same hearing about 80% for herbaceous, 100% for tree, and 2-year period. And I don't believe there was an issue here. I could be wrong. Someone could correct me on invasives. I think this was about revegetation and so forth, but correct me if I'm wrong. That's my comment. Thanks.
The invasives are not actually on Jesse's property, so they're not something she has control over, though there is a lot of knotweed off her property. Anybody else, questions or comments from the commission? Anybody from the general public, please use your raise hand function. It's found in the reactions at the bottom of the screen. Tony.
Yeah, I was just going over some notes from a few weeks ago. I just want to make sure that we've satisfied our questions about where the soil berm along the stream came from, and just to make sure I remembered correctly that the mound of grass clippings has already been removed?
Tony, I was going to address that as a condition. So I think we can go ahead and have a closed discussion and then talk about that in the conditions section.
Okay. I see nobody from the general public. Chuck, are we all set as far as you're concerned?
Yes, we are. Just looking for the conditions after the meeting is closed.
Okay, so I need a motion to close.
This is Brian. I'll make a motion to close the hearing on 31 Wilson.
This is Bill McCansell, second.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Tony Rodolakis in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Walter still here, and can he speak or is he mute?
Don't see his rectangle.
We had
I don't see
lost him
Walter.
earlier and he was in the waiting room. So he seems to be gone again.
Yes.
Okay, all right, Martha Moore in favor. So we'll call that 4-0-0. Because Walter is dropped out. Okay. All right. That's enough to get it passed. Oh, here's Walter. He's in the waiting room. Should we give him a chance to vote?
Why not?
Okay, Walter, we just had a motion to close the hearing on 31 Wilson. Are you in favor?
You're muted.
Hello, Walter, can you hear us?
I can, but I'm probably having router problems. Sorry.
Okay, we just had a vote to close the hearing on 31 Wilson, and we're just waiting for you to vote yes or no or abstain on closing the hearing.
I think Jesse's done a great job. I'm in favor. Walter
Okay.
Talbot's in favor.
All right, thank you. Conditions, please.
So if I can jump in, Jesse, I know you had a jump on cleaning up the yard waste to the back, right?
Yes.
Left
Yep.
of the property.
Yes,
So in the conditions, we would put something to say, continue that and take it to the level that we talked about.
yep,
Likewise with the soil berm, I know you had made progress there as well. So the condition would be to finish that effort as well.
of course.
Just gotta put it down the record, that's all.
Understandable.
That's all I
And
have,
what
Mike.
about the piles of firewood on racks at the back? We need to finish removing those as well, I think.
Yes, those are going to get moved out of that zone.
Okay. Any other conditions that people think need to be listed?
Yeah, it's just clarification question. Would the firewood racks be moved out of the 25-foot or outside the 35-foot?
Outside the 35-foot, they're going to be up close to the driveway.
Great, thank you.
Yep,
I believe that's what the plan shows now, the updated plan.
yes.
And does the plan have soil stockpile and material stockpile shown?
So I'm not planning any soil stockpile. I'm having it taken off-site immediately during excavation. Material stockpile I don't have on there. I was planning to do that in the driveway or in the strip of yard sort of just beyond the driveway, also outside of that 35-foot buffer, in front of that giant pine tree that's there.
Okay, that works for me. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Okay, and somebody has their hand raised. Bill?
Bill.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the language you typically use, but you know, we want that we want construction material and debris as far from the resource area as possible. And so I think we should always have that language there in addition to a location as specified. But I think we need that in addition to saying it'll be somewhere in the driveway. It's got to be clear. It has to be, if it's on the driveway, it has to be as far away from the resource area within the buffer zone as possible.
Okay.
Thanks. That's my comment. Thanks.
Any other?
Yeah,
Andrew
just-
Dribbin is in the waiting room.
Just to get it on the record, I'm going to say that we want to have street sweeping each night. And if machinery is used, orange construction fence on the 35-foot line.
Chuck, just to clarify, on each night where there's work. Right, so if you're working that night, it gets cleaned up.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other conditions we need to make sure are in the list?
Just a quick sort of side question for Chuck. Chuck, I've seen a lot of references, of course, to the orange fencing. Is that so it's visible to the operator of the equipment
Yes.
as opposed to being the color of most? So I figured that was the case. I just wanted to check.
So, yeah, so a lot of commissions are switching over to mulch sock, which is brown. Sometimes you get the mulch sock that has like, it's black with a red or orange stripe on it, but I can't choose which one they're using. So it's so low and it's so durable, an operator can drive over it.
Right.
And then we'd never know. So this is close. I usually ask for this when it's close or when it's a lot of work, like a full foundation that's being built. And I like to have orange fence in that one area just to protect what's behind it.
That's really helpful and makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Are we ready for a motion?
This Bill McCann make a motion to accept the notice of intent with conditions for 31 Wilson Street.
This is Tony. I'll second that.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Tony in favor.
Bill in favor?
Walter Talbot in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Andrew, since you just arrived, you might abstain from this vote.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is Andrew Dribbin. I'll abstain.
Okay, so 501. And we have just finished 31 Wilson. We're ready for 7 Heritage Drive.
All right. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, guys.
Same 15-day appeal.
Yep.
And 21-day issue.
Okay,
All right.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you,
All right,
guys.
Bye now.
All right. I'm gonna drop out and come back in because I'm frustrated that I can't see anything. So let me back in and then I'll read the blurb.
All right, Scott, you can sign in and let me know if you're going to present or you want me to get that ready for you here where I'm at. But you can certainly present your presentation. I think you said you were going to do that.
Yeah, I have something.
Oh, I was just getting you ready. Martha's going to, so you better stop sharing the screen and let her do her sign in and reading the blurb as she says, the legal notice. So I'm going to make her co-host right now. She'll be back in a second.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Did I say hi, Tony?
I'm here. Okay.
Yep.
View gallery. Oh, look at all those people. Okay. All right, 7 Heritage Drive. Continue the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability, followed by Scott Kearns under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to construct a second floor addition and expand an existing mudroom on the driveway side of the home. There will be no excavation or foundation work done. All of the work is within a 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall, Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, and on the Conservation Division page under Current Project, Assessor's Map 29, Lot 57, R, CC file number 2023-15. All right, so this is a request for determination of applicability. All right. We wanted to discuss the updated plan showing things like erosion control, construction entrance, etc.
Yeah, Scott, please present. Your floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you guys so much for joining. Let me just get myself settled here. I mean, would you mind confirming that you guys can see my screen?
We sure
Yeah.
can.
Okay, wonderful. So I just wanted to provide an update on some of the recommendations that we heard last meeting, in particular around yard waste and mitigation being actually in the conservation land. So the first image I'm showing here, or images I'm showing you here, going from left to right. This is our plot plan. And I'm indicating 2 areas, one in orange and one in blue, where primarily the blue is where the yard waste is piled along the fence. And the second, the orange area is where there's quite a lot of the garlic mustard, I think, that was identified on the inspection. I appreciate actually that, because it's been an education for me in invasive species for the last couple of weeks as I figured this out. So I appreciate that, learning about this. So, and then in the middle there, I'm showing an image taken on July 18th, so about 2 weeks ago, along the side, looking, I guess it's kind of northwest along the property line. And in particular, I'm just highlighting that this whole area, it was covered in this garlic mustard, which I'm then showing on the right there. Unfortunately, the garlic mustard is in its fruiting phase, given the late summer. So this is all seeded pods, but that's where we kind of went in this whole area and did our mitigation. Any questions before hopefully this is helpful. All right, cool. So just wanted to provide an update of images I took today, July 26th, trying to get the same perspective on the northwest side of the property line there. And what you can see, you might not be able to see is, so I've gone in and really done the mitigation in this first part in the orange area indicated on the left. You can actually see some of the yard waste bags that we've accumulated. I'm also showing that in kind of mid-frame in the middle, there's a tree. I believe it was a maple tree that was covered in the Oriental bittersweet. So we actually went in and cut that and removed it from the tree as requested as well. This is now taking a image facing directly west on the property into that orange area. And I'm just trying to highlight all of the garlic mustard that was pulled. I think, Martha, you said that you've been doing 15 years of this. Well, my 7-year-old daughter is now very much against garlic mustard. So hopefully we've encouraged the next generation as well. and now I'm showing you some of the yard waste mitigation. I'm trying to show that we the bottom of the fence line now, which was, I think when your inspection was done, it was this bottom of the fence was not visible due to leaves and yard waste that had been accumulated. So that has been gone down to the soil completely. I did not appreciate how many worms would be present, but that was quite fascinating as well. But this basically is this whole area. There is still a little bit more to do. I'll be honest, there's a little bit more to clear. But for the most part, I've gotten down to the soil, scraped out this whole area along the property line there. So, and I just want to close. I filled up about 10 bags. I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but there, like I said, there's a little bit more to do. I'm looking to get my my composting permit, I think, down for to dispose of this soon on the other side of town. So just a quick update. So this was, I did say will be complete by today. There was a little bit of rain yesterday, so I didn't get to it yesterday, which was the original plan. But we've removed the garlic mustard, and we'll be happy to continue to mitigate the garlic mustard garlic from now on, and also the Oriental bittersweet as well from our trees. So the next part, I don't know, I'm going to keep rolling, for time's sake here, but there was a request to highlight the areas where in the driveway, both where our vehicles would be located, but also where a dumpster for debris would be located, as well as build materials. So I've scoped this out with with the all of these dimensions are actually accurate to the size of a dumpster, as well as the size of our cars, and spec'd out what we would propose as our stockpile area, which is on the furthest end of the property on our driveway. It's a 32-foot by 8-foot storage area. We could make it a little bit bigger, but we kind of get into some walkway space egress issues if we do. So we could potentially make it a little bit bigger. The dumpster is a 20-yard dumpster. I wasn't familiar with the different sizes for an addition. I don't know if that's a mid-range. We might have to go larger, but that's where we were proposing to put that. And then the two cars, the space for two cars would fit at the end of the driveway. And there was a request just to kind of go over the narrative of how we would shuttle in and out during the construction period. So my beautiful wife here is a nurse, and she's out by 7. So one car leaves, and then the second car would relocate to the street to allow work vehicles to enter the driveway. We're expecting contract vehicles to leave sometime around 5:30 in the evening, at which point both cars would then drive back into the driveway for the overnight period. I hope that's helpful. And the last point was just to demarcate where we would put our erosion control barrier. So I'm proposing that we would put fencing kind of along the property line here. I'm indicated that in green. And there was also a request for the construction of vehicles, if they do park down at the end of the driveway, that there be an additional optional erosion control barrier placed down at the bottom of the property as well. So that that's kind of what we had to present today. So hopefully we've addressed the requests from the last meeting, and I guess we'll pause there.
Okay, any questions or comments from the commission? Brian?
Yeah, a couple of things. First is, it sounds like you've taken out most of the yard waste, maybe even further down than we typically have people go. Oh, I know what you said, down to the soil. Typically, we want a little bit of a layer left. But if you did go down to the soil, you want to be aware of invasives coming into that new prime territory. So I'll leave it up to, Chuck, Martha, whoever, to suggest maybe some seed that could be spread out there, or something to try and hold that soil without invasives being in there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, so it's great that you taking this yard waste out. I just wanted to be clear that taking it out doesn't mean you can go add more in the future. You know, you take it out, and whatever motivation there was for chucking it over the fence, don't do that anymore. And that's the only 2 points you have to make. Back to you, Martha.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I don't know if I'm able to respond, but I think we've learned our lesson there.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna say, don't be too discouraged about the garlic mustard. It gets much easier as you take care of it because you get fewer and fewer plants you have to pull. So, you know, future pullings after a couple of years, it's maintenance and not huge amounts of them. And the best time to pull them is around May when they're in white flowers. And those white flowers show up beautifully and you catch them before they make seeds. And that's a good thing. And ideally you want to like lay them out on the driveway or put them in a black plastic bag to kill them before the seeds form, before you do something else with them, like send them to the compost area or whatever. I'm a little concerned about sending garlic mustard with seeds on it to the compost area, but maybe Chuck has some suggestions of what's the appropriate thing to do with those that have been pulled. And that's all I had to say.
Sure, I would tell you to just put it in your regular trash so it gets incinerated.
So if you've got separate bags of garlic mustard compared to the yard waste goes to the compost area. And if you can put some garlic mustard in your trash each week rather than 5 big bags. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I actually didn't take a picture of this. That we were solarizing the garlic mustard just in the black bags on the driveway. But
good.
yeah, so we can just put that in the regular trash.
But in my experience, if you put too much out in the regular trash, they don't take it. So you might want to be judicious about how you put it in.
Understood.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission with questions or comments?
I had some questions. Oh, you're going to get to me. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, nobody else on the commission raised their hand, so go to Chuck.
Sure. So I just wanted to make sure that I do like the erosion control. I think in this area, I mean, straw wattle would be fine if readily available, but I'm not sure that you need the long length of erosion control along the house. I wouldn't purchase that or install it until we do our pre-activity meeting. And I understand there's not any digging, you're just going up. And you're not even going up above the addition that's on the far left of the screen. So that could, you know, may not be needed, but we could determine that at that pre-activity meeting. The dumpster, you showed a picture of the dumpster. It looks like somehow you got it into your driveway sideways. And I think that's going to be difficult to remove. And I'm just wondering how that would happen. But other than to getting into those details, I would just let you know that if somehow you have to change that arrangement around and the dumpster goes out on the street, I would like to be notified because you would have to, obviously the town, is this a private street over here or is this a public street?
It's public.
Yeah, so I think you might have to get a permit for that, and I would like some additional erosion control. But if that doesn't happen and somehow it stays in the driveway and you leave one of your cars out there, then that would be fine. But I just wanted to note that somehow that dumpster got into the driveway and they were able to turn it sideways.
Yeah, no, I take that point actually. I think we frequently do 2 stacked cars in the driveway, so I'm pretty sure we can turn that right back around and leave it at the end of the driveway. No problem, and have the 2 cars. We can propose a different arrangement.
Just wanted to make that comment. That's all I had.
Anybody else? Chuck, are we going to be okay with timing if we close and approve tonight, or do we want to just close tonight and hold off on voting for approval till next time?
No, we'll be fine. This is absolutely fine.
Okay. All right. So let's start with general public. Is there any members of the general public here who have comments or questions? Please use the reactions function at the bottom of your screen and the raise hand button inside there. Seeing none, do we have a motion to close?
I move to close the hearing for a request for determination of applicability at 7 Heritage Lane.
This is Andrew. I'll second that.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Tony Rotalakis in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Walter Talbot in favor.
Andrew will let you vote next.
All right, Andrew Dribbin in favor.
And Martha Moore in favor. So we are 6-0-0 to close. Okay. Do we have specific conditions that we want to list based on our discussion? We had the erosion control and the stockpile area. Anything else?
We should have one in there about invasive control for several years, 2 years, 3 years.
I would ask for 3 years of invasive control.
Okay, and that includes keeping an eye out on the area where they remove the yard waste.
Is that all right with everybody else?
Yes.
Any other conditions that you can think of, Chuck, that we need to put in?
So we're gonna have the street swept out every night that there's work. Again, if the dumpster ends up being on the street, we're gonna have to come up with some new conditions. So I'd like to know if that happens. It sounds like it's not going to. The erosion control should not be installed until we do our pre-activity meeting. And yeah, just that's I guess that's it, because Brian mentioned the yard waste.
Okay.
And is it, if I understand the map correctly, we're already as far away with the dumpster and so forth from the resource area as we could be. Would that be a fair reading of the map?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they can't go any further back from the street, and they're right up at their property boundary.
Right. So what I'm saying is I think the map giving us the locations is enough. I don't think we need an additional condition saying it needs to be as far away from the resource area as possible. Thanks.
All right. This is an RDA, so the way to actually allow the project to go forward is to vote for a negative determination. If it was a positive determination, you'd have to come back with a notice of intent. So if the commission is willing to have this project move forward, can I have a motion for a negative determination of applicability on this project?
This is Bill McCants. I make a motion for a negative determination of applicability for 7 Heritage Drive with the conditions as stated.
This is Tony Rotalakis. I second that.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Tony in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Walter Talbot in favor.
Andrew Dribbin in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. I think that gave us a vote of 6-0-0. Good luck with your project.
Oh, thank you. So we get to come back next week?
Only if you want.
We're always happy to have you, but we don't need you. You're all set.
Okay.
And you'll be in touch with Chuck about pre-activity meetings and stuff like that.
And that's right. And again, I have 21 days to issue. So I don't know where you are with your project. I don't think I see it in the building department yet. So it seems like there might be time. So that's not going to affect you. All right. I appreciate it. Excellent presentation. And we'll see you at the site visit, the pre-activity meeting.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Bye now. Guess we're gonna.
Somebody needs to stop sharing. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
I gather there's no progress on Meadowbrook access easement.
You know, I actually ended up talking to someone from Meadowbrook, and I believe now that they're just working out some details. I might have said that before, but there was a meeting recently, so maybe we're getting closer without any updates. Just hearing it from people as I run into them, knowing that they're members of Meadowbrook. So I think there's still hope for this easement. And I can also let you know that a advertisement for advertising the work that we're looking for out there for bids has gone out into the paper. And so we're looking for people to give us some numbers on the project as it was presented, with the parking area and the handicap spots and the pathways and barriers that we had proposed.
Okay. Great. Old new business, 123 Lila Lane. And do any members have any questions about the completeness of that project? Bill?
Thanks. So as we know, this is based on a very old, several decades old project. And I just thought we should think about what kind of information we should or should not have. Looking at the order of conditions, there was a lot of boilerplate. Perhaps that was the style at the time. It does talk about, though, in addition to the construction of a single-family house, swimming pool, pool decks, etc., the installation of catch basins and a discharge pipe to carry runoff from the proposed impervious surfaces to the existing detention pond for this phase of the Sanborn Village development. So we're not talking about just a single-family home, but there's reference to a discharge pipe and so forth. And as we know from dealing with past such language, we have to be very careful when we consider a certificate of compliance. I have to get a sort of general here and then back to the specifics. As we all know, our bylaws only apply if they're more stringent than state law, not if they're the same and not if they're less stringent. So looking at the state regulations for certificates of compliance, one of the things it says, this is 10.059D. If a project has been completed in accordance with plans stamped by a registered professional engineer, architect, landscape architect, or land surveyor, a written statement by such a professional person certifying substantial compliance with the plans and setting forth what deviation, if any, exists from the plans shall, not may. This is one of those interesting places where our local regulations say may, but the state says shall. And again, we cannot be less stringent than the state. So one of the questions is was there such a plan? And it makes me think, because this was part of a development, there very well might have been. And that shall accompany the request for a certificate of compliance. And I didn't see such. Maybe it doesn't exist, but it's something we need to know. There's no map that shows how this connected to this existing detention pond reference on page 22 of the submission. We're entitled to that, both under state and our local regs. And so I personally would like to see such a map, in addition to getting that question answered about whether there were such engineering plans and whether we then need that final document. I realized we had a past project where it turned out there was a detention area, but it had been given over to the town. Well, that'll be fine, but that's information the commission needs before we can go further, in my view. That's it for now. I know we did an on-site and so forth, but I felt it was important to talk about these issues before we got into specifics. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Anybody else with comments? I wasn't able to make the on-site visit. Could somebody fill in so that I know what you saw? And I just want to acknowledge that 123 Lila is in my general neighborhood. I'm in that same Sanborn Lane area, but I do not think I have a conflict of interest on this project. Brian.
Yeah. So my observations were about this property and not a greater area detention pond. Having said that, put it aside. So this is a project's been around for a while. They appear to have done a good job at things like not chucking yard waste over the retaining wall, not throwing trash down there, or I think we did see one soda can. There is a pipe with runoff from the front of the roof, no erosion at the base of it. That seems fine. There is a swale off to the right, according to GIS. That's actually, the head of it is primarily on the next door neighbor, and only the tail of it extends to this land, but that seems to be fine as well. So from my perspective, I saw nothing in there to be concerned about. In fact, it was better than I'm used to seeing in my short time on the commission. There was really nothing to take issue with, in my opinion, on the property itself. That's it.
Anybody else? Comments, questions? Chuck, how about you?
I didn't go to the site. It was on the Monday morning, and so I don't feel like I have any comments other than that. I agree with Bill that these older orders of conditions are, it takes a few readings of them to kind of get the rhyme and rhythm of what's going on there. So even to figure out where to look for things on them seems to be a little different. So I'm not surprised that we found something to be concerned about, even after thinking that things were okay. But that's my only comment.
Tony, you did have your hand up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Bill and Chuck have already said.
Okay. If there were a as-built plan or a description by the builder, how would we dig for that.
We wouldn't dig for it. That is a request from the Conservation Commission to the, in this case, to the law firm that's presenting this for certificate of compliance. It's their duty to provide it for us.
Okay. Would it make sense to ask for that and see if they can find it, and we can hold off on the vote on this till the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to just have Bill go over exactly what he's looking for. So when I convey this to those attorneys, I get it right.
Yep. So I'd like to see per section 8B of our local regs, the as-built plan. So section 8B 1A, and that would include wetlands resource mitigation areas. It's all listed there. And then I think it'd be helpful to refer to 10.05 9D, 310 CMR 10.05 9D, which says if it was completed in accordance with plans stamped by a registered professional engineer, etc., we need a written statement by such a professional person, doesn't have to be the same one from decades ago, certifying substantial compliance with the plans and setting forth what deviation, if any, exists from the plans. I think if we have that information, those documents, that will help us to understand what's the status of this detention pond now and so on and so forth. How does everything sort of fit together? Because I agree with what Brian said earlier about how good the site looked, but we have some unanswered questions and some missing documentation here. So those are my
So 8B of our local regulations asks for an as-built plan. So you're looking for an as-built plan.
right, and that we have discretion to ask for that, whereas with the state, if there's such a plan by a professional engineer, that shall accompany the request, and it didn't. And it just seems, I'd be very surprised, given what we have on the order of conditions, page 22, where it talks about this being a phase of Sanborn Village development, that there weren't such plans at the time. And so we need some kind of certification.
So you're looking for, so the only thing I have to tell them is you're looking for the as-built plan or a set of plans to more documentate this.
Right. The as-built plan, as well as they have to tell us, were their plans stamped by a registered professional engineer, and if so, can you get such a professional to certify substantial compliance with the plans? Because you're asking for a certificate of compliance from us, and state law says a professional has to give us this certification so we can make that decision.
We're looking for the as-built plan for the development, so it covers the retention pond, right? Not just the property.
Right. That makes sense, Brian. Yeah.
What happens if the retention pond was not built? Where does that leave us?
I would,
They'd be out of compliance to me.
or Tony, that's a great question, but it would be some work for that professional engineer, architect, landscape architect, etc. They have to certify substantial compliance with the plans and set forth what deviation, if any, exists. So that would be a pretty major deviation, and they'd have to explain why that happened and where that leaves us.
And this would fall on the homeowner, the applicant, or
Yep.
or the developer, if the developer is even still around.
That's for the law firm to figure out, as opposed to us.
Brian?
Yeah, the 2 times or 3 times that you've read the state regulations, you said, if such a plan exists, it shall be attached. So if it doesn't exist, then moot point, or what, how do you read that?
Yeah, if even though this was part of Sanborn Village development, the project had no plans. That just doesn't make sense to me. But let's say hypothetically that were the case, then you're right, this wouldn't apply.
No, I'm actually more thinking because it is an older one, suppose they can't find it, suppose it's gotten lost, any number of scenarios. So it does say if, and that is a loophole, if you will.
No, because they'd have to demonstrate for us on a preponderance of the evidence that no such plan was completed. Now, if they say, well, it's lost, we're still entitled to have a professional certify that they're in compliance.
Okay.
Yep.
I
And
just have
so,
a
Bill,
question after everyone's
So
finished.
that would require somebody going to the development, locating where that retention pond was constructed, and then putting together a drawing showing what's essentially the current location, current condition. Is that a possible next step?
I would think it would be. My only concern is, right, we're sitting here on the commission. These are the conditions for the certificate of compliance. And they basically have to make a presentation to us that satisfies us that these conditions have been met.
Yeah, so I think you were jumping ahead there. We don't need to borrow that trouble yet. At this point, our request is, please give us said plan. Then we may have steps downstream, but right now, the only step is to get the plan. And if they don't have it, they have to find it or
Yeah,
anything
gotta
else.
find that.
That's on them.
The plan and the statement to show how close to the plan they actually built the thing.
Yes.
So we may request an as-built, but we must request the statement in
Yeah.
writing to compare it.
Yes.
Okay. And, we're saying decades, but it's really 30 or 40 years. It's not 150 years. Yeah, this was built in the 80s and 90s. So
No, and
I did check the dictionary. That's still decades.
it is decades. But they had professionals and plans and computers back then. They may have been more simple computers, but they did exist. So, and blueprints, there may be blueprints on file at the town hall or some other place, So, okay. So
Don't move on.
that's the plan. We're going to ask for them to come back with that, and we should move on to.
No. Do you hear me?
Yes, I heard you. I thought you said.
I have a question. No, I said don't move on.
Oh, sorry.
Bill, I had a question. So when we issue an order of condition, that's the rules that the commission has determined are appropriate for each project. And both of these orders of conditions, it doesn't ask, it specifically says what's required when the project is finished. And it does not mention what you've mentioned, which is obviously there's a dating difference and maybe our bylaw wasn't even in place at that time. So because this is kind of inconsistent with what I've always thought, if it doesn't ask for an as-built plan inside the order of conditions, then you cannot ask for one when you're asking for a certificate of compliance. So it's in both of these. I think it's like page 2A, number 7, and then on number 11 on 270-171. But even if you don't find it, since we're not, so in our new orders of conditions, we always say these are the requirements that we're looking for. 3-year review period. We're looking for an as-built plan stating substantial compliance, Form 8A, and a letter from an engineer that's stamped and signed. So we know, everyone knows what they're asking for. So I want that. I'll just throw that out to you and ask you, we have two things that are not really jiving with each other here.
But Chuck, they'd have to make that argument. What we know as a commission in 2023 is what we're required to do to issue a certificate of compliance. It doesn't matter to us that this was issued back in 1989. Now, the applicant can make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, wait a minute, You know, back then, here was what is in place and we're giving you that, and that's fine. We'll let them make that argument, but we're not going to make it for them. I don't think we have any legal basis to do so, because what matters to us for a certificate of compliance is what's in front of us. And I hear you, right? These regs have changed over time, but that's for the applicant to figure out, not us.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to the commission. I don't, I haven't seen it work that way. I've seen these, even on newly issued orders of conditions, I've seen us have to stick to what's written down. And the only arguments is, what do we mean by a qualified professional? I understand that that should have been determined at the order of conditions, but it's up to the commission. I've said my piece.
Well, that's fine. It is up to the commission. I'm telling you, as an officer of the court, I'm not voting for a certificate of compliance that doesn't comply with the law unless someone tells me, can demonstrate to me on a preponderance of the evidence that a different law applies because this is a 1989 project. Just speaking for myself, but that's my position.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think it's all right to, for me, it's more or less process. So now I would, when I see this, I would just say, you know, you need to provide some more information, and you might want to come to the meeting because some questions are going to come up about, you know, an as-built plan, and this requirement that we have in our bylaw.
Although to be clear, it's the state law that is the issue here, not our bylaw this time.
That's right. It's the state law that says shall. It's our bylaw that says may, which I will tell you all.
But
If it
again,
went to court, it's not defensible.
so one step at a time.
Right.
The first step is to say, we have these questions.
Yeah.
In our current reading, we would need this, and then they may have it and the issue could go away. They may not have it and make the argument that, that they don't have to do it because it wasn't explicit in the order conditions as written at a time. But either way, we'll cross those bridges when we get to it. The issue right now is to say, we have an issue, one issue, it is this. If you have it, great. If you don't, you can come to the next meeting to get a fuller understanding of it. But for now, I think that there's only one option we really have, which is to say, please produce this.
Right. And let me be clear. 10.059 doesn't say you can only ask for this if it was in the order of conditions. I understand what Chuck is saying, but that's not what state law says. So the other thing they could do is say, this was 1989 when we got our extension. Here's what the regs said about certificates of compliance in 1989. They could produce that for us. If it reads differently than this, we'll certainly consider it, and that would be fine. But that's what we need to see. They need to look at Reading regs from 1989, because I believe they have existed since the early 80s in some form. And the state regs as they were written in 89 regarding certificates of compliance, and see where we go from there.
So can I have a motion?
Is there a motion for this? Are we just gonna not vote on it until we get what we need? I mean, I'm not sure what the motion would say.
Yeah, so you can just, I can just take this back to the applicant and let them know what the commission is looking for.
Right, so we'll just table it for tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so the consensus, if I have no objections, is that we ask Chuck to tell the applicant we're looking for an as-built plan if it exists, and certainly a written statement from a professional certifying how close the construction comes to the original plans.
But also making it clear that if their understanding is the requirements under the state regs and local regs were different in 1989 than they are in 2023, we're happy to consider that as well in terms of figuring out what we need. Just to be fair to the applicant, so that they understand we're open to hearing what they might have to say about that.
So we're going to point them to their get out of jail free card.
So would you have them come to the meeting, or would some sort of memo be sufficient?
I would think, because this is so clear in the current regs, state and local, that it'd be better to give them the opportunity to do some digging and see if it was different, because we don't want to have a back and forth with them when it's really about, well, let's see what we can lay our hands on here, or we feel differently than you, and then maybe give them the option of either doing it on paper if they want to show up and have a conversation, right? I would think we'd be amenable to that too.
Would you mind me asking you one more question? Just a scenario. Okay.
Yep.
So the commission has a project that comes in and it's pretty simple. It might be a project for a friends group or something like that. And the commission doesn't want to require what's typical for a certificate of compliance. They have to request one, but they want to not require the engineer, and they don't want to require an as-built plan. So if they just wrote down what we were looking at here, which was just make the request, I'm hearing from you that that's not enough. The order of condition also has to say that the Conservation Commission is not requiring a certification that it's in substantial compliance by an attorney, and they're also not requiring an as-built plan for this project. And that would hold the day, or would we still be in the same position?
No, because this goes back to what I think Brian had pointed out earlier. It's a conditional. If a project has been completed in accordance with plans stamped by a professional engineer, if that's not the case, we don't get here. The thing that caught my eye is in the order of conditions, it talks about this phase of Sandboard Village development and a detention basin and so forth. So we're not dealing with a typical single family home situation. We're dealing with something called the Sanborn Village development. Based on our experience in this area, I reasonably think that it probably was completed in accordance with plans. But if they say, no, it wasn't, then we don't have to go there. So I don't think we have to say that explicitly because of the conditional if. And what I'm trying to convey is, I assume because this is a village development, that there were plans. I'd be surprised if there weren't. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so are we good? And I think we have nothing from 10 Plymouth Road tonight.
No.
Tony?
Oh, I was just going to formally motion that we postpone further discussion on this matter till the next meeting,
Awesome.
if we needed a vote.
Yeah, it's a discussion item. Oh, well, no, it's old new business. I don't think we've been voting on that typically, so it's fine if we don't vote.
All right, but I think we've discussed this long enough and we can move on. Nothing from 10 Plymouth Road. Do we have any new news on any of the violation notices?
Just the 25 Baker. I visited and they have substantially adhered to our request, so I'm considering that as a closed issue. Yay.
What was the story of 25 Baker?
That was next door to a house that was being renovated, and we looked over and saw some issues going over there. They had a compost pile right next to the resource. It had things included such as waste from their chicken coop. There was also a pile of cinder blocks right next to the water. So we talked with them. They were very understanding. They're one of these groups who just did not know. And I went back 3 times now, and they were making progress. And today it was what I would consider good enough. They didn't scrape the compost pile down to where it was the original level, because a lot of that has turned to soil over the years. So I'd say they did what they were supposed to do and did it pretty thoroughly.
Cool. Well, thanks for following up with that.
Nothing to do it today. It was a gorgeous day.
Yeah, just a little heat.
All right, that's wonderful to get one off our list like that. We've got that long list, so.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I did go by Angie. Nobody answered. I know I can go back there myself and look at the shed, but I figured I'd try to talk to Deirdre one more time.
Okay. All right, moving on to discussion items. Chuck, do you want to take over at this point?
Yeah, I will just let you know that we received some correspondence from Lynetta Lane, and it was
Lynetta or Annette?
Annette, and sorry, Annette Lane. Thank you, Annette Lane. And the people that sent it, Kendra Cooper was the author, and she was describing how water flows through the project and comes down from the project and affects different houses as it goes past the project. And she was just trying to provide some background on that, and also let us know that the direct abutters are concerned about flooding. And that's not a surprise, because that always comes up. She also dropped off a 1980 or 90 article from the Times Daily Chronicle that also talks about this same project. I'll post that between meetings, and you guys can read that. It's doesn't have a lot of in-depth detail, but it does talk about the concerns about this area and about a project that was proposed on the exact same lot. So that's all there is for correspondence. And then I'll just turn this over to Bill Kent, and we'll be talking about the regulations review and discussion.
All righty. I just, before we get to them, just need to do a little bit of framing. As you may recall, or to bring everyone back up to speed, what we're talking about here is based on Section 1 of our Reading Wetlands Protection Regs. From time to time, we can amend the regs for various reasons, but one of them is to clarify language and to maintain consistency, blah, blah, blah. But what we're about here is clarification. It's also possible to amend them based on what the commission has learned over time and so on and so forth. But we're trying to keep this particular phase simple and about clarification, as opposed to making any major changes, which would probably require more process. Okay, so first about language. MACC advises the following. The Attorney General's office is particular about the wording of wetlands bylaw provisions, so it's important to follow an approved model. MACC provides a model in its electronic resource library. As my document describes, I looked at the regs from 40 different municipalities around the state, and a lot of the language is quite similar. Many of them are following the model, or they're using the kind of language you see in the state regs. So being particular about wording, it means it really needs to sound like the state and local laws that are out there. And Mass DEP, we're talking about making clear our idea about no disturb and no structure zones. Mass DEP states in its preface to the Wetlands Protection Act regs, extensive work in the inner portion of the buffer zone, particularly clearing of natural vegetation and soil disturbance, is likely to alter the physical characteristics of resource areas, which we know. But that's just by way of saying this is well accepted and well supported by the science, having this special protection the closer you get to the resource area, even though we have jurisdiction to look over the whole buffer zone. All right. MACC in its handbook actually gets specific in chapter 14 about setbacks, no disturb areas, other expansions of jurisdiction. And actually Reading played a role in this. There's a case that's cited a lot from 1996 that makes it clear if a commission wants to create a wider protected area, a larger buffer zone, the local law should give it clear authority to do so. The Reading Commission back in 96 ran afoul of that. The appeals court called them out on it, and that case, Fafard versus Concom of Reading, has been cited ever since. The greater the setbacks in a bylaw, ordinance, or regulations, the more important it is to provide a waiver provision. We do that. So really, I'm just talking about the things that we already do, but this is from the MACC, and it's really just by way of reassurance that our commission really has been proceeding consistent with the recommendations of MACC. I also looked in the MACC buffer zone guidebook from 2019. And one of the things they said is while the WPA regs don't provide performance standards for buffer zones, local bylaws and ordinances may and often do include them. Some even regulate them, by the way, as resource areas. We're not proposing at this time to do that, but there are a number of communities that have done so. It also talks about burden of proof statements. We'll get to that a bit later, but MACC says, this is in chapter 5 of the buffer zone guidebook, the importance of the statement of burden of proof cannot be overstated. They just say it's just extremely important, and we'll get to that. All right, well, what do the state regs say about this? 10.53, the potential for adverse impacts to resources areas from work in the buffer zone may increase with the extent of work and the proximity of the resource area. Of course, we talk about this all the time as we consider applications and so forth, where we think, well, how close are we to the resource area? Again, that's consistent not only with the preamble to the state regs, but also 10.53 specifically. It talks about how the issuing authority in the buffer zone can require erosion and sedimentation controls, clear limit of work, preservation of natural vegetation adjacent to the resource area. Again, there's a strong foundation for what we're doing in state law, but typically municipalities like ours get more specific. It's helpful for applicants to have that specificity. Okay. So it's all right. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and look at this document, which I prepared and was distributed back on July 5th. So bear with me for a moment. Here we go. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. All right. So I've already talked about what our local regs say. As agreed by the commission following Chuck's consultation with relevant town authorities, the minor draft amendments are to clarify. We've talked previously, there's some places in our local regs where the Reading Wetlands Protection regs are misnamed, just to correct those. That may seem like it's minor, but sometimes people who go to court can make mischief with inconsistent labeling, so that's the reason for that. It's minor. But let's get to something more substantive. Section 3D1 and 2 talks about the zone of natural vegetation. Based on our previous discussions and what we do on a regular basis, it currently says bordering any wetland, the commission may require a zone of natural vegetation. But that's something we consistently do. And so for clarity, I suggest changing the may to shall. You see it's footnoted there, replacing the word may in the current regs with shall, because the commission has consistently required a ZNV of some width. We sometimes refer to it as buffer strip, but it seems to me that's been pretty consistent, so that's the reason for that. The language that's not highlighted is just the regular language, so that's the one change there. If we go to number 2, under most conditions, a zone width of minimum 25 feet. Wider ZNV may be required depending on site conditions. Footnote 2 added just says, it's been noted that wider ZNV language can be used to protect, for example, vernal pools. That's reasonable. But you'll see in this document, we talk a bit more about vernal pools. All right, so here's the proposed additional language, and then I'll get to Tony's question. A previously developed or disturbed ZNV shall be restored to a naturally vegetated state to the maximum extent feasible, including but not limited to requiring that a buffer strip be created where none currently exists. Now, I've already told you, MACC says we have to be very careful about our use of language. We can't just pull it out of the air. So I wanted you to know in footnote 3, it reflects our current practice in this regard. The proposed language is based on that used by other commissions, as found in my research, specifically Arlington, Newburyport, Wellfleet, and West Tisbury. So choosing several towns, their language is all very similar. It's similar to the model MACC language. But we can stop there for Tony's question.
Tony?
There, okay, I couldn't unmute myself. Got it sorted out. Okay, thanks for being patient. In item number 2, it says under most conditions, and it's the most conditions that my question will revolve around.
That's the current language, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yep. And then the next sentence goes on to say that, well, sorry, the first is under most conditions, a zone of a minimum width of 25 feet would be considered sufficient. And the next sentence says a wider ZNV may be required depending on site-specific conditions. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in order, if there's a scenario where a narrower ZNV is requested or deemed appropriate, that would require a variance?
No, because I think that's why the town says under most conditions.
But it only talks about a wider ZNV. It doesn't talk about permitting a narrower ZNV.
Right.
It says the minimum is 25 feet under most, but a wider one could be required.
Right. And that argument could be made. I'm just saying under most conditions typically gives you flexibility, but Chuck has the long institutional experience. I don't know if this has been an issue, if Chuck wants to speak to that.
So we're talking about, has a less than 25 feet ever been approved that I know of? I don't think that it has been approved, but I think we've come up on some sites where one didn't exist at all, and it was a gravel driveway or lawn or something else. But yeah, I don't think I remember the Z and V being touched too much.
Well,
So
I'm thinking about one we just discussed tonight, which was 16 Beverly, which would fit into his green section here, that the retaining wall was within 25 feet and the ZNV at the bottom of the retaining wall is natural vegetation, but at the top of the retaining wall was lawn. And so that lawn comes up less than 25 feet from the wetland. And we've had a number of other people like 10 Plymouth have lawn getting to within 25 feet of the wetland. So that actually previously existing lawn often is closer to the wetland.
Right, and previously existing is tricky because there's only a few towns that actually address pre-existing explicitly and say you have to restore it, because that's a big step. Your community really has to be behind you on that. Whereas with language like this, it just leaves you with more flexibility, at least as I understand the MACC model and the 40 communities I happen to look at here.
Even where it says a previous developed or disturbed ZNV shall be restored, including requiring that where none currently exists. So would that give the commission the authority to go to a homeowner who's filed an NOI to replace their lawn or their backyard with native plants?
Didn't we
Well,
just do that at 31
we-
Wilson?
Right, and the point has been made again, Chuck, with institutional memory and others, that requiring a buffer strip of some kind is a common approach and certainly supported by science and elsewhere. So notice that it says, to the maximum extent feasible, that falls within commission discretion, including but not limited to requiring a buffer strip. And indeed, Tony, we would be saying here that this is something we routinely do. Again, our amendments this time are about clarity about what our typical approach is. That's my understanding anyway.
We have not typically required a 25-foot ZNV when there is none, but we have often asked for a 3 to 5 foot ZNV at the back edge of the property where there had been none.
Right, Martha, and so that's why this language was borrowed by 4 other communities who do exactly that kind of thing. They want some kind of buffer strip, and it can vary by. I'm thinking about that handmade site plan tonight with all the color in it and so forth, showing what was done there, and it created a buffer strip of sorts all the way along the resource area boundary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're suggesting that we make this change to have it in our regulations so that we make the language of our regulations consistent with our practice.
Correct. And use language similar to that used by other communities that have done the same thing, so that we're following the MACC's guidance to use recognizable language and not be crafting it from from full cloth, so to speak.
So Martha, it sounds like our current practice is to typically request a 3 to 5 foot zone of natural vegetation along a water body or along another resource area. And I could certainly see a scenario where a much larger buffer strip would need to be created where none currently exists. For example, a large development, a strip mall, a parking lot, that has a lot of runoff, and we'd like to control that a little bit more. But what would prevent a future board from expanding that 3 to 5 foot zone in a residential backyard to something much greater that could essentially take over someone's backyard?
The only way to answer your question is conservation commissions have a lot of discretion, and people have the right to appeal, although if they want to appeal something that's under local bylaws, they go to court with it. And courts provide substantial deference to conservation commissions. You have to be arbitrary and capricious, which is a very high bar. So the answer to your question is, it's possible a future commission could take that approach. On the other hand, every commission that serves the town of Reading has to think about community buy-in. and how's the community going to react to that? But that's what I'll offer. Others can weigh in, of course.
This is where my knowledge is minimal, but it becomes dangerous because I don't particularly understand some of the issues, and it's been a long time since I formally studied this. But is there a possibility that this would become a take, somehow preventing somebody from enjoying their property lawfully?
Great question. I've done a lot of research for the past few months, coming back up to speed on takings law and so forth. Establishing that there's being a taking is very difficult. To give you an example, there's a case in which a person was planning to build a development with over 20 houses. And because of the local conservation commission's concerns about resource area and so forth, they were ultimately limited to one house. And the appellate court said, no taking, you're still getting value out of this property. A taking really has to go quite far. Now, on the other hand, Tony, in the riverfront regs, if you've got a small plot in the riverfront area for a house or small business, the state regs say you can build it. It's still going to be cabin and so forth, but the state put that in there to prevent a takings claim.
Right, and they have to give you access to those properties too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. On the other hand, you don't get to say, oh, good, well, then I want a nice waterfront view and so on and so forth. It's not saying that. They have to give you enough. I'll give one last example. You got two lots together and you want to build on both, but one's closer to the resource area than the other and so forth. In the riverfront area, you don't have a right to develop necessarily both lots. If you can develop a part of one lot, there's no taking. But Brian, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, it actually goes back a bit in talking about community buy-in. In Reading, we have an example of that. One of Chuck's predecessors, maybe his immediate predecessor, I'm not sure, was very strict applying of the rules and regulations, and she was removed. And so I think some of it is self-limiting. Certainly for whoever's in Chuck's chair, it's self-limiting. And for the commission members themselves, probably less directly in unhappy people response to things. The other thing I'll note is the more restrictive a commission gets, the less likely it is that people go to the commission. If it becomes such a burden, such a hurdle, we'll see even more work done without a permit. And we already see that on a pretty regular basis. So it's up to the commissions to have that balance, to have the idea of protecting the wetlands, the habitat, and at the same time, not causing an underground economy of unpermitted work.
If it also helps, Tony, just a little bit further down on the document that's up on the screen right now, talks a bit about methodology. But if you look where it says findings, survey indicated providing additional protection first 25 feet of the buffer zone was the norm. But in fact, the vegetated buffer varied from 25 feet to 50 feet. Most common name being no disturbance or no disturbance zone. So Reading has already made a decision by calling it 25 feet that's more conservative than those towns that go up to 50 feet. And there's a number of them. And so a future commission would, you have to pay heed to it's 25 feet, not 50 for this ZNV. So here it's just the recommendation is based on these norms and our consistent practice. Going to the next page, bordering any wetland, the commission shall require a zone of natural vegetation, ZNV, or no disturb zone. That is, those terms can be used interchangeably since our applicants tend to do that, since a lot of them are represented by specialists who work in a lot of municipalities, and they happen to see that no disturb zone label. And so the idea was for clarity, that people understand ZNV, no disturb zone. We're talking about the same kind of thing. Looking at section 3D4, that would be similarly amended to protect the integrity of the ZNV or no disturb zone. No new foundations, including footings, frost walls, etc., shall be permitted within 10 feet of the ZNV. Depending on special site conditions, a greater distance may be required. So here's the ZNV plus this 10 feet or greater distance can be referred to as the no structure zone. Now we see that on a lot of the plans that are submitted to us, where it'll say no disturb at 25, no structure at 35. Now, this goes to what you were saying earlier, Tony, or the question you asked earlier. Reading is very conservative here. Based on my survey, no structure, no build zones are the norm, and they vary from 40 to 75 feet in width, with 50 being by far the most common. So in the 40 communities I looked at, Reading was the most conservative with its 35 foot. And I'm not suggesting we disturb that, but.
Can you explain or define conservative? Does that mean that they're on the aggressive
on the side
or
of if you will, favoring the freedom of the homeowner,
Okay.
I guess is what I'm trying to say. Conservative meaning, well, we're going to say no structure up to 35 feet, whereas other communities are going all the way up to 75 in some cases, and the average is 50 feet. So I guess that's what I mean by,
okay,
we're not going to go as far.
That's
as
what I
some
thought
other-
you meant. I just wanted to make sure I was.
Oh,
too
fair, because
direction.
those are loaded labels. I get it. So,
And are you just suggesting in this section, scroll back just a minute?
yeah,
You're
you bet.
suggesting that we just clarify the language, we're not changing the size.
That's right. So that when people put no structure zone on their site maps and so forth, it's what's reflected here. They're referring to that 35, 10 feet or greater distance from the 25-foot zone. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Just
Move on.
clear. All right. Now we get to this language which you talked about before. The qualifying phrase, the one thing we didn't have is including but not limited to. It is used over and over by other municipalities. It makes sense. And so recommended here. If the current language were retained, it could read, for example, and you'll see that change the word just a little bit because there was some concern about how this was worded. So it could say no new structures, including but not limited to. This is what most municipalities do. This is what the MACC does, including but not limited to foundations, footing, frost walls, or other in-ground. And then I just suggested the word fixtures. So leading with the word no new structures, giving those as examples of structures. But, because this was a great conversation we had a few meetings ago. Some said, well, how much detail do we go into? It turns out other towns are not shy about going into lots of detail. So Beverly, when it's talking about structures, including about limit to swimming pools, pool decks, And Chuck, you had specifically talked about driveways. 3 of these 4 municipalities given as examples happen to mention driveways as a structure. The one that goes in the other direction is Natick. So I wanted to give an example of one town that went in the other direction. And you see right here, it says no structures allowed. And it says buildings, houses, barns, garages, and sheds. But then it says items such as fences, retaining walls, decks, patios, riprap. Those are not structures. Natick's approach is not the usual one. Most municipalities who give a list of structures would include things like fences and retaining walls as structures. But I just wanted you to see that other example. But then you have Rockport, porches, decks, garages, driveways, sheds, roads, parking lots. South Hadley, similar, and so forth. All right. So that's just for your consideration. If you were interested in what if we had a longer list, I don't know if you would want that in these clarifying amendments as opposed to something think about the future, but I felt that should be there for you. Okay.
Bill, I've got a question, and if this
Yeah.
is a tangent, we can talk about it some other time. But Beverly, I noticed includes utility lines, but 310 CMR 10.53 in the limited projects allows more favorable conditions for utility lines.
Yep.
How
I-
is that reconciled?
It's a great question, Tony. I don't know, and I want to assure you, the only reason these examples are here is not as an endorsement, but just to show how specific some municipalities choose to get. That
Right.
was, I assure you, the
I'll
only
withdraw my question.
reason. It may be, Tony, why when last time I checked, Beverly had only 4 commissioners out of 7 appointed. Who can say? Okay. I do have on page 4 at the bottom a new recommendation resulting from this survey of 40 municipalities, and that's the burden of proof standard. We don't happen to have a standard of proof in our local regs now, and as I present here, I suggest here that could be a hazard for us. MACC, I actually here just quote its model bylaws, burden of proof. Proving by preponderance of the credible evidence. Preponderance of the evidence, common term, just means more likely than not. More likely than not. A cautionary note. If Reading does not set forth a standard of proof in our regs and a matter goes to court, the court will have to supply one. Relevant case law, I've read over 50 cases, state and federal, that relate to Wetlands Protection Act and local bylaws. Judges don't like to be placed in that position. So I recommend adopting the standard of proof used by Mass DEP in most municipalities, and of course the MACC and their model bylaws. And I think it's the one the commission has been implicitly using anyway. And it would just require 2 small changes. We already have in 2F1 our burden of proof has the burden of demonstrating the commission by a preponderance of the credible evidence. And then section 8D1, burden of proof by preponderance of the credible evidence. And again, that's just the language used. MACC, Mass DEP, and most other municipalities that were surveyed. And again, I think it's the one we use instinctively anyway.
So slow down for a minute. I'm comparing to my copy of the regulations.
Yep.
And you're suggesting that within section 2F1 titled burden of proof,
Right.
we add,
We actually give a burden of proof. In other words, it says burden of proof, but it doesn't say what the burden of proof is. And I'm suggesting we should say what it is.
okay.
Yep.
So, yep. So you've stuck in that green into the existing law.
Because that's to say what the burden of proof is. There's only, I think, 2 towns that I looked at that had a higher burden of proof called clear and convincing evidence. And don't want to touch that. It's not what the state uses. It's not what MACC recommends. It's not what most towns use. So just choosing the one that virtually everyone uses and that to most people just makes intuitive sense.
And then we're jumping to the end to 8D1, which is also a thing about burden of proof related to order of conditions. And
Right.
you're also just adding in that phrase highlighted in green.
Right, because otherwise both of them say burden of proof and don't say what the burden of proof is. Yep.
Okay, I understand that.
All
Okay.
right.
Now we're jumping to the tree policy.
Right, and with the tree policy, as we talked about, we wanted to harmonize these 2. They didn't happen to mention the tree and shrub policy, didn't happen to mention what we say in our regs. Items 1 through 4 are unchanged, so this is a proposed draft new item 5. In applying this policy, the commission will take notice of the need to protect the integrity of the zone of natural vegetation or no disturb zone as provided in section 3D. That's one way we could do it. Or we could say the commission will apply this policy consistent with that policy. That's another way to phrase it. If you'd like it phrased, we'll apply the tree and shrub policy consistently with, you know, this other one. We could write it that way, but I thought we'll take due notice is one way to do it. It's really your choice between those two, but what it does is it incorporates the Reading Wetlands Protection Regs into the tree and shrub policy so that we're applying them consistently when it comes to ZNV or notice dirt.
Can you scroll so that we can see your second choice there? Okay.
This is just to make sure that buffer zone is capitalized everywhere.
Wait a
for
minute,
consistency.
we were talking about tree policy, and I didn't see two options for tree policy.
There aren't two options for tree policy. I said, it says we'll take due notice. That's what I'm proposing. But if there were concerns about that language, I'm saying that there's another way to phrase it. I don't have it in this document. It's just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have questions thus far before Bill goes on to page 6? Okay, you can keep going.
Alrighty. This is just giving you the law that supports our more stringent protections for the portion of the buffer zone closest to the resource area. Okay. Defining the term structure. It's not part of this current process, but some of you had expressed interest in thinking about that term. So this section just gives you some definitions, shows you what the Town of Reading zoning bylaw says about structure. It gives you this, or it points you back to the structure examples from Beverly, Natick, and Rockport above. And then it gives you examples from Concord, Plymouth, and West Tisbury. So this is just for people to think about, food for thought, not for this particular amendment process, but because it came up in conversation, I thought you should see what different towns do with structure if they want to define it differently. But here's the next substantive thing, the last substantive thing, the need for clarification in our regs regarding vernal pools. Some on the commission had expressed an interest based, for example, on past expert assessments. In the language explicitly defining vernal pool habitat to include the area within 100 feet of the boundary. Well, the reason for that is the WPA regs say in relevant part, it defines a vernal pool habitat. And then it says, as well as the area within 100 feet, to the extent that that habitat is within an area subject to protection. So it gets kind of complicated. And in other words, to have that 100 feet, it has to be contained within the boundaries of another resource area. However, that's apparently not the direction Reading took. And by the way, MACC strongly recommends that if you want to protect vernal pools, you define them differently than the state does in your local regs. And it appears that that's what Reading did. The local regs already provide a 100-foot buffer zone for vernal pools without qualification based on several provisions. But there's an apparently inconsistent provision, which is why I think this commission has been so careful with vernal pools in the past. But I think it's something we can address if the commission wants to. Okay, so let's have a look. It says, section 2C1, that's what's indented here. Any freshwater wetland, including marsh, meadow, or bog, et cetera, any creek, river, stream, pond, including vernal pool. You'll see where I put that in italics, pond, including vernal pool. So that's what Reading did in its local regs, as a way of giving direct protection to vernal pools as a resource area by combining it with pond. All right. Thus, next paragraph, a vernal pool is entitled to a 100-foot buffer zone. Why? because our regs in section 2C3 applies to all those areas specified above except for lands subject to flooding. Now, typically, that's where a vernal pool is in state law. But again, local law can take a different approach. It can be more stringent. So vernal pool is included in the definition of pond and not land subject to flooding. That would give us 100 foot. And that's consistent with our section 4G7D, which refers to work within 100 feet of a known vernal pool as a buffer zone project. So where's the inconsistency? Well, that's in 3J1, which without qualification accepts and adopts the current requirements, definitions, etc. for vernal pools. And in doing that, you're back to that state definition, which says you only get that 100 feet if it's within another resource area. All right, so what could we do? Simple way would be to clarify that we rely on those regulations regarding vernal pools, except where our regulations are more stringent. And we're allowed to do that under state law, which says nothing contained in state law should be construed as preempting or precluding more stringent protection of wetlands or other natural resource areas by local bylaw, ordinance, or regulation. So all of that is a way of getting to this fix if the commission is interested. Thus, section 3J1 of the RWPR could be amended to read, the town of Reading accepts and adopts the current requirements, etc., except as provided in sections 2C and 4G7D of these Reading local regulations. Because that way, you'd still keep the certification requirement. That is, the vernal pool needs to be certified. But the local regs then give you that 100-foot buffer because it's defined as a pond. So you're not tossing away the state certification and so forth. Instead, you're landing on it this way. And again, just to reiterate, MACC encourages municipalities to provide this kind of protection to vernal pools because vernal pool habitat is not actually in itself a resource area under state law. It only becomes one if the municipality makes it a resource area. And again, at least in its plain language, it appears that's what Reading did, but it has this inconsistency, which as I understand it, has really caused challenges for the commission in the past. And this is suggested as a fix.
So Bill, I'm getting lost a little bit between where the state defines what vernal pool habitat is and then the requirement for a certified vernal pool, because certified vernal pool, that term doesn't appear anywhere in the Wetlands Protection Act or the regulations.
I'm not sure I understand so this is from the MACC. Vernal pool habitat is only protected if the vernal pool is certified and to the extent such habitat is an area subject to protection under the WPA. That's from the MACC. And vernal pool habitat 310 CMR 10.04. The boundary of vernal pool habitat is that certified by the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. 310 CMR 10.04.
Right, hang on, let me catch up there. 10.04.
And then another one is 310 CMR 10.57, 310 CMR 10.57, 285. Presume that vernal pools do not exist on a site unless, one, they have been certified by the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife or a clear showing, that's in quotes. Once a vernal pool certified, NHESP updates their database. And So those are the citations I have from MACC and.
Could you tell me those again? I didn't.
Sure.
10.10.04.
This is, okay, so these are from MACC, 310 CMR 10.04 and 310 CMR 10.57 2A5.
2A5. Okay.
Okay. In case it's helpful, this is from chapter 16.23.3 vernal pool habitat. There's several subsections to it. 16.23.3 of the MACC Environmental Handbook.
Okay. I've got some homework to do this week then.
Well, that's why we're having this conversation. Yep. Okay, so that's.
But if suppose we do a site visit and it's springtime and we see a depression and it's filled with water and the water clearly has been there long enough for a very stable aquatic community to develop. There are wood frog tadpoles and there are peepers that are, you know, swimming around in there and mating and laying eggs. And we meet some of these other conditions for a vernal pool. Is the handbook saying that we couldn't regulate it as a vernal pool unless it were certified? It would have to go through a certification process?
Well, actually, that is what our local regs are saying because of this confusing inconsistency. On the one hand, it's saying it's a pond and it has a buffer zone. On the other hand, it's saying it accepts the state law definition, which requires certification. And so the idea is to try to square the two, to eliminate the inconsistency and recognize that Reading has in fact decided that vernal pools are a resource area with a buffer zone, the same way a pond would be. At least that's how I understand the plain language.
As a historical note, many years ago, Reading played a very important role kind of on the vanguard of defining what vernal pools were and proceeding with the certification process and developing that. So I'm not surprised that Reading's a little bit out on its own compared to some of the other towns. They were
well, but they're fully backed by the MACC. So, Brian?
Yes, so this brings me to the point that I made in an email and last time, which is my concern is one of these potential vernal pools. We, the commission, would like to protect it on the chance that it may become a vernal pool. But there's a process to get it certified. And if you're a developer, it's not in your best interest to get it certified and have yet another impediment to whatever development you want to do. And so I accept the point you made last time that this round we're looking at clarifications, but I would like us to get back to considering some kind of protection for a potential vernal pool, assuming we can define it clearly enough.
Interestingly, Brian, I did a thorough search of the MACC Environmental Handbook. Now, I can't put my finger on it right away, but there is at least one reference to potential vernal pool in there. So that's encouraging. Look, the problem here is, and it's true of any municipality. It may be that historically there was the one, but then the local regs, perhaps they were amended to say, we accept, let me go back up. You know, we accept the state standard, and it's, if you accept the whole state standard, but you're also saying it's a pond with a buffer zone, you have this internal contradiction. And Brian, I agree with you. It'd be nice to clarify that. I'm just proposing a possible fix in the meantime that continues to give us the flexibility.
I just
Yep.
want to kind of put it on the record.
Oh,
I'd like to get-
absolutely, because we see something, and Tony was saying the same thing, and saying, that sure looks like a vernal pool. And entitled to protection. Well, what do we do then? Because Reading is not saying currently, well, we're gonna go off on our own. We don't need
Yeah.
certification.
No,
We've decided it is what it is.
That's aside for tonight's conversation, but I
Yep,
just
yep.
want to bring it up.
Well, just what we have done in the past is asked for a third-party review to come in and take a look at the areas that look like we might, when we're delineating wetlands, that we might want to protect as vernal pools. So having a third-party review has allowed the reviewer to come in and look to see if there are obligate species in those potential vernal pools.
But
Chuck has his hand up. I'll pass the baton to him. And I just want to note, we're almost at 9:30, so we might want to wrap things up fairly soon. Chuck,
Sure. Section D, zone of natural vegetation. It says, depending on special site conditions, a greater distance may be required. So we've used that to stretch out our jurisdiction over, let's say, a potential vernal pool.
and which section D is this, Chuck?
Zone of natural vegetation.
Is that section 2D?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's 2D, 3D.
3D.
So would that capture those areas? I certainly hope the answer is yes. It does seem to need a consensus of the Conservation Commission and an understanding of the habitat and what parts of the habitat need to be more protected than 25 feet of the zone of natural vegetation.
So Chuck, what number was that under D?
4.
4, okay.
It's section 3D2, I believe.
Yep, it's on page 2 of this document I've been sharing. I can go back up to it. And I agree, with Chuck, if anything. So there it is, 2. A zone width of a minimum of 25 feet. A wider ZNV may be required depending on specific site conditions. And you'll note that I dropped a footnote 2 there. It's been noted this can be used to protect, and I think what Chuck is saying, even potential vernal pools. But I think between that language and the fact that the current local reg definition includes it in a parenthetical with the definition of ponds, gives the commission even more local authority to say, we think this is a vernal pool and we're going to get that expert opinion, but we're going to protect it in the meantime. I don't see how you can't be on very solid ground here. Either way you read it.
That's reassuring. Thanks. I had another question. I think Tony maybe got the answer. I missed the answer. The ZNV is, we want to, since we're asking for a ZNV and we're always asking for this vegetated buffer strip, do we still, with these changes, would we still have the ability to, for the commission to make a suggestion less than 25 feet in a previously disturbed area? In a wooded area where this is all natural, I get it. 25 feet, we can stick to that. But in these areas that are all lawn and lawn, like up to like, we don't have them here, but it's usually everyone up near a pond has lawn right to the pond. Could we require a 3-foot vegetated buffer strip rather than a 25-foot, zone of natural vegetation? Or are we going to be required to, it's still up to our discretion?
It's been up to your discretion, because looking at item 2 right here, that's what the commission's been doing consistently. So the commission has been implicitly interpreting this to mean it can be as little as, 3 to 5 feet. Now, I think what Tony was getting at is maybe we need some clarity here. And so number 2 could say a zone width of up to a minimum of 25 feet, for example. I'm just putting that out there as a suggestion, if that would address Tony's concern and perhaps what you're saying. But this commission is consistently interpreted under most conditions, a zone width of a minimum would be considered sufficient. It doesn't say is necessary or is required. It just says would be considered sufficient. So I think the commission's had that leeway. But is this a time for clarity, right? Maybe you want to rework that language a little bit for clarity and say, for example, under most conditions, a zone width of up to a minimum of 25 feet would be considered sufficient, something like that.
I don't think up to and a minimum go together.
I agree. I'm trying
Gotta
to
have one or the other.
I agree with you, Martha, but I'm trying to thread the needle here to address the interest, but I agree it's an awkward combination. So maybe we want to think about number 2.
Yeah, well, I think the place to make some language edits would be in the section highlighted in green that you're proposing.
Hmm.
That would be the place where we would propose, we have a 0 buffer zone and we'd like to have some buffer zone, but we're not trying to take away your whole backyard.
And that's
So-
right. So Chuck, to get at what you were saying, if you look at the green language, that was about us, we consistently asked for some kind of buffer strip, but you'll notice the green section says nothing. It's basically talking, if you could read number 2 this way. The first one is about undisturbed land. We almost never see that. The second part is a previously developed or disturbed ZNV shall be restored to the maximum extent feasible. It doesn't give any feet, right? The maximum extent feasible could be 3 feet, and we've seen it that way. So that's another way to look at.
Does the
number 2.
words maximum extent feasible put the commission, does it give any more power to the applicant? Because they can make an argument against what the commission says, instead of the commission just saying it's been our determination that a 5-foot buffer strip is needed in this area.
Right, and maximum extent feasible again was borrowed from other municipalities who are doing this. That doesn't mean Reading has to go in that direction. But I guess the question would be, how would you get at your interest? A previously developed or disturbed ZNV shall be restored to a naturally vegetated state. What? That gives you that flexibility you're talking about, I guess, is the question.
Then we could add a couple of sentences to explain a little bit, maybe something like, and I'm just speaking, off the top of my head, under certain residential circumstances, a vegetative strip, a narrow vegetated strip may be appropriate. In other circumstances, the commission could apply a maximum feasibility standard. Maybe there's a way to specify that we're talking about those in particular those residential areas.
Yeah.
So can I suggest, given what Martha said about time, that it looks like item 2 and the language there is an item of interest. We won't have to go back next time and reopen and talk about the whole document. We can focus on things that people have follow-up questions on. It looks like number 2 is one. But remember, to the extent you come up with language here, it's got to be the kind of language you're seeing in the state regs, MACC's model regs, or other municipalities. We have to be careful not to be crafting language that goes off in a direction that, the AG's office is going to say, what is this? Obviously, town council will look at it first, but that's the caution from MACC.
Yeah, we need to look at this. I had one more question. So I did notice that you're looking around in certain towns and whatnot. And I was just wondering, obviously you went to different places that are not like communities such as Reading, like our sister communities. We actually have a list of sister communities that we look to when we're developing our bylaw and other things in town. And when you were reading some of these and some of these other ones like Natick, I was thinking, well, Natick's not really like Reading. And or Boxford. You didn't say Boxford, but Boxford, a town I know, would be able to push people further away because they require 2-acre lots. And, you can have a 50-foot buffer, restriction zone and a 2-acre lot. And, you still have enough time or enough land for a McMansion and everything else and every expansion you could ever think of while you live on that property. And I think that has to do another reason why we're back around 25 feet. But it would be helpful, and I guess I could look into this also, is to see what other, what our sister communities have, and if they mimic some of these restrictions that we're thinking about.
Well, if you look on this page, so the methodology, I was taking a statistician's approach. If you got 96, there's only 96 municipalities according to MACC as of 2019 that had setback indications. If you look at a total of 40, which were picked basically at random, that's a huge sample. That's getting close to half. But I didn't know about these sister communities. So you've got footnote 4 on page 2. It lists all the communities that were looked at. I'd be happy to look into sister communities. I don't know what they are, but I'm happy to assist by looking into them. Maybe some have been looked at, some haven't. I mean, partly what I was looking for here, I hear what you're saying, Chuck, was language. What kind of language do they use? As opposed to, how many feet did they choose? Because I wasn't thinking we were going to change 25, 35. I was thinking more about language, but yeah, no, municipalities vary tremendously, as you say, lot sizes in some communities. I mean, my house in Reading is on a 1/4 acre and it's apparently non-conforming for the neighborhood. The lots are supposed to be even larger. And I'm thinking, really? So, yeah.
Well, I do appreciate, Bill, how you did go outside of our immediate neighbors and you've pulled some towns out from central Massachusetts, Connecticut, River Valley, to really get a sense of what's happening across the state.
Thanks.
Even a town on Martha's Vineyard.
Yes. But actually, Chuck, I'd be independently interested in knowing what the sister towns are, and I would really, truly be happy to pursue that and report back next time if that'd be helpful.
Sure, I'll provide that list, and
Thanks.
I mean, I think that this is very helpful.
I think
So,
that'll
Bill,
be more
when are you
persuasive.
going to write this up and publish it as a review article?
Well, right, maybe through MACC. I was thinking, Chuck, it'd also be more persuasive to town council when the time comes if we've looked at the sister communities, if there's a list. So that's a good idea.
I would let you know that they'll probably ask us to do that.
Yeah, sounds good. So let's save time by doing it first. Yep.
I'm going to say Stoneham and Linfield, which you already mentioned, are probably on that list of sister communities.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple, but
Yep.
And it
But
may
I can do
be
more.
that the other sister communities are not among the 96 that have regs, but it would be good to find that out.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Even so, some of the 40 that you've looked at, a few jump out as being good comps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some have similarities. I agree with you, Tony. And others, yeah. West Tisbury and Reading are probably not that similar, but it was still interesting to read.
I think Long Meadow's a good comp.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I just want to kind of get a straw poll. Other than this one buffer strip question, are people pretty comfortable with the other clarifications that Bill is presenting or proposing for us? Are there any other sections that people want us to revisit because you're not comfortable with them as he's presented?
I just want to dig in a little bit more to the
Yeah.
vernal pool, certified vernal pool distinction.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready to move on. I think that
No.
would be good of his presentation. We should be able to look at it for a little bit and
Yeah.
then get back and
Okay,
discuss
but
it
the
one more time.
specific areas, vernal pools and buffer strips are ones that people specifically want to wrestle with a little bit more. Anything else?
Yeah, so we should probably, instead of making it as time is available, we should put this on the agenda so everyone knows to look at this document and have their questions ready for a specific time. That probably would be helpful also. But I'm going to say, Martha, yes, everything on this, everything, all of this, yes. I want to look it over, and I'd like to know when we're going to be talking about it again so I could either agree with it or have some more questions.
Okay,
So realistically, given how busy everyone tends to be, would that be next time or the time after that? I also realize it depends on how many matters we have, but want to give people enough time because frankly, I've been doing administrative law for decades and reading about vernal pools just makes your eyes cross when you try to square everything. So
Should probably go out 2 times, but I think that will consistently have less and less hearings. I think only 1 came in this week. So for our next meeting, we'll have whatever we continued plus that 1. And then after that, I expect 1 or 2 more. The
so
following
do you
meeting.
think either August 9th or the 23rd, what would people prefer for our next bite at the apple?
23rd.
I agree.
Great.
Chuck, I don't think we continued anybody this time.
Well, we did. It was 0 Small Lane.
Oh, true. And 123 Lila and 10 Plymouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other
Oh,
than
yeah.
that, we didn't.
Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, but we, the ones we had actual discussions with the people
Yeah.
people who showed up got their hearings closed and issued.
That's
Yep.
true.
You are correct.
That'll also give me time to do the sister towns and get that information to Chuck to share with all of you well in advance of the next time we have this discussion.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, I move to adjourn.
we can't adjourn yet, sorry.
Oh, okay.
If
Tony,
Bill
all right.
stops, if Bill stops sharing, I'll be able to see our
Oh, yeah.
agenda.
Sorry about that. Yep, will do. There we go.
Okay. There is a DPW monthly meeting on August 1st. I'm available to go to it. Anybody else who wants to come, please let Chuck know and he can send you the Zoom link. And I would like to suggest that we postpone approving the minutes of July 12th because I didn't get a chance to read them over yet.
And I have something too. So,
Okay,
so I'm gonna, well, you have to get an answer to that, but then I'll share the screen. I have 2 sites for the commission to look at.
okay. Anybody object to postponing approving the minutes of July 12th?
No, that's fine.
Okay, Chuck, your turn.
Okay, for the DPW, they bought a $5,000 dog watering station. And it's gonna go approximately where that red dot, yellow dot is right here. They, typical DPW fashion, they've already done a lot of the work. We've seen some of that work out there done, but now they're coming to us for a permit and they want to know what type of permit they like. This is in the town forest on Stroud Ave off Grove Street. All this area is protected. It's I think it is an area of critical environmental concern. It's estimated habitat for rare wildlife. It's estimated habitat for rare species. But where this is located is outside of those areas. It's within 60 feet of a pond and the edge of a wetland over here. And I don't exactly know. I would say within the outer 100 foot of a buffer zone, and this coming from this direction. I think it's been confirmed that in this area here, there is no parent wetland. The work may be several days, involve some more digging. There's a drain to this structure that's just going to be some runoff into the ground. Maybe some riprap or maybe some gravel will be put there so it doesn't create I don't know, some erosion. But for the most part, it's going to be connected to a water line, going to fill up a trough water, and it's going to drain out, but it allows the dogs to drink. That's my understanding of it. And they want to know, they want to know, what does it look like? What's the review process that the Conservation Commission would like to take when looking at this project? So we have administrative review, which I'm going to say that's what we typically call a minor project approval. And then we have a request for determination of applicability or a notice of intent. The water line exists. I hope I made that clear. They're tapping into an existing water line.
Will there be a lot of digging to make this work? Are they creating piles of soil?
I don't have a description from the DPW about what work they have to do and what work they've done already. I don't know if that's clear. That's probably not so clear.
Yeah, where are we?
At the end of Stroud Ave, where the water treatment plant used to be?
Yeah, it's easier to just start shutting off layers and let people see where we're at. And the last thing that makes it real clear is getting rid of that. So here's Grove Street. Here's Lot 5, Grove Street, Birch Meadow, golf course is right here. Stroud Ave, compost area, past the compost area, down into the water treatment plant, which has been removed. It was kind of in this area here, but there's still 2 sheds in this area. I think this is a shed that might be an old pump station or something like that.
And the gray is paving.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so it's paved here. Is this paving, Brian, or is it just dirt and gravel?
It's paved a little bit to the right, then there's another fence, and that's where the pavement ends, and then it's a dirt causeway.
Yeah, so getting in there has been done, historically because of the water treatment plant, and so I think they just left the pavement. Most of the roadway that's being used these days and that's being repaired is this area, compost area for the DPW trucks and all the residents of Reading to use. So down in this area is not maintained as well, but again, this is not a paving project. This is I don't know, like a plumbing project, municipal plumbing project.
A couple more things. That area is already disturbed. There is a water hydrant there. That's the previously existing water line Chuck was talking about. There's also a telephone pole that has a light on it to light up that parking area. And the spot there, it's a small grassy area, but it's not in a natural state whatsoever.
Right. And I asked I know the focus on DPW town work, want to make sure that we're consistent with our determination on what application the Conservation Commission should suggest based on if this was the town or a homeowner or a best friend, shouldn't matter. What are we looking at here?
So I don't think it's a minor project, Chuck. And just looking at the list of projects, I don't see which category that would fall into.
Okay. Any others have a comment? Martha?
I would think RDA at most. I really don't think it needs to be a notice of intent. And I am not looking at a list of examples of minor projects, but does it say including but not limited to, or is it just including?
You're gonna make me open this again, aren't you?
I'm picking up on Bill's language there.
I heard that.
We have a loophole in there.
So, no, it says minor projects include, and then it's installation of unpaved pedestrian walkway, installation of fencing, freestanding stone walls, pruning trees, planting species of trees, conversion of existing lawns to uses accessory to existing single-family homes.
Right.
Okay, so I guess it's an RDA. Would other people agree?
I think so. Is this a structure?
Oh yeah, it's a pretty substantial fountain for, I mean, you know, $5,000. So
Okay.
I don't
Martha, I
have,
agree with the RDA.
yeah, so we don't have a picture, we don't have a description. We weren't there when the prep work started. It's next to these protected zones. It isn't previously disturbed area. Again, most likely it's okay, but you know, one of the processes that the commission gets to do is to use an RDA to determine whether this is a project that they need to pay attention to or not. So it's appropriate. Moving on to the next one.
Oh, Walter has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Walter.
No problem. The water itself, do you have to turn a valve to turn it on? Is it always running? Is it going to be runoff? What happens to the water?
Well, that's why it was so expensive. They got a special design here. The dogs only need to bark twice and the water will start coming out the fountain.
You're shitting me.
What do you really think?
It's like and if you clap, a light will come on. So
Never mind.
no, I just think it's like a metered faucet. You press it, a certain amount of water comes out. The rest was just 10 o'clock. Driven. Blah, blah. All right.
10 minutes of 10, Chuck.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get to the
haven't
next
run
one. Are
over
we
our
good?
deadline yet.
Walter, are you good?
Just
Okay.
a quick point of information. I don't think it's an ACEC. There is no ACEC in the area of critical environmental concern in Reading.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of hesitating because I saw when I turned that on, I thought I saw some green in those stripes. And so it might have been the background.
Maybe priority habitat, but it's not
Yeah.
ACEC.
No, it definitely is that for sure. We've heard from Natural Heritage enough on this place. Okay, next share. Let me get the next share ready. Stop sharing. You can see that I was occupied during the meeting a little bit, but so this is a place right down the street in Pleasant Street. It's a corporation mixed in between residential housing. They have forgotten about kind of general maintenance. In this area here, so we have a loading dock in the front. Now, so let me just get you.
That's next to the park, right?
Yeah. This is Hunt Park. This is the Tot Stop.
The
police
wax company or something?
Yeah. And the police station's up in this area here, up there. So that's more the center of town. There's a stream, not perennial, right here running alongside of it, and there's a wetland, and it's probably pretty wet, almost up against the foundation. This was built, at least this addition was built in 68. but this is a third generation company. Somewhere in the 50s, this thing was started out. And maybe that was even with an existing machine shop.
And Chuck,
What's that?
that's the stream that runs behind 31 Wilson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wilson is up here. That might have been an easier landmark to mention. Anyways, there's been no maintenance. It's all deferred maintenance with overgrown trees. There's a lot of knotweed in the back here, right around this yellow strip. This bigger dot that I put here represents a willow tree that one of the limbs has fallen off and crashed onto the roof, which started this whole process. The insurance company came out and they said, you're not covered, and we're not going to cover you unless you get all these little trees away from the foundation and you kind of clean up this area. So the owners of the company are proposing, and it's up to the commission, anywhere from 3 feet to 7 feet to clear that out and maintain it in perpetuity so that they can have access to those sides of their building to maintain them. I took a walk out there. It's very vegetated. There's only a few small trees in this area, 6, 8 dBH, a lot of smaller trees. 4 or 5 trees were growing right up against the foundation. But some of them were further back. The owner wants to only remove the trees that are against the foundation, that are just a little bit bigger than saplings, or the ones that lean into the foundation, and they would not cut them if they weren't in that cut zone. So if you agreed to 3 feet, then anything that was in that 3-foot area is all they would cut, leaving the majority of a leaning tree or shrub up, in beyond that 3-foot area. There's also poison ivy growing along the wall in this area that they're going to remove, and some ivy up here. So the request is to be able to go in there and just open up that area so they can get into it, cutting down any inch and a half woody vegetation that's in this 3 to 7 foot area, and get permission to cut the trees down, but also remove the dead willow limb that's probably 18 to 22 dBH, or caliper. I guess it's dBH when it's that big. That's fallen on the roof. So this is, what do we do here? Is this because it's a maintenance area? Is it a minor project permit? Maintenance area, small trees, a dead limb that has to be removed anyways? Or is it also an RDA where the commission wants to understand what trees can be replaced and where would they be replaced, or left, certain part of them left standing, or a donation to the fund. Like I said, the trees up against the foundation, I wouldn't count. And my recommendation is because they're obviously volunteer. The ones that are further back that are just growing up and over the roof, and that the insurance company has a problem with, that's up to the Conservation Commission what they do, but they actually have to come down because the insurance policy needs to, remain intact. Any suggestions on permits?
And I'd be inclined to give them the leeway to be able to perform the maintenance that they need to perform. So if that means removing a few extra trees, I think I'd be okay with that.
Would you recommend, do you care if it's 3 feet or 7 feet? I think 7 feet, in my opinion, this was their suggestion, might be a little bit too far. And I suggested maybe doing a 4-foot area But then when they wanted to maintain it, they could open up behind them just a little bit, because everything doesn't need to be fixed right now. There's only a small like seam right in this area that that needs some attention.
Okay, because if they need to get a truck back there
No, they'll
Or,
never get a
uh,
truck back there.
or a boom lift or something, they may need a little more clearance than 3 to 4 feet.
That's not, yeah, they're not asking for that. They're asking, so it's only about a 22-foot high building back there. And it's block. And so it's unpainted block. And what we're looking at is work from the roof for the flashing, for the rubber roof, just to get the branches out of the way. And I saw some cement work that may need to be done, some seam work, which is the cement also. But I don't see a truck going out there. And if it was, it would probably have to come in from this side. And then I would really hesitate to allow a truck getting back in this area without the commission actually looking at it and then giving permission.
I'm just thinking about most buildings of that style. There's like foundation plantings along the side of the building that are hydrangeas and hostas and small shrubs and stuff like that. You wouldn't have trees right up against a building. So it strikes me that it makes sense to take out the volunteer trees that are growing up right up against the building. That's absolutely common sense to me. I guess my question is, what are they going to have there when they're done? Will there be foundation plantings, or will there be a 2-foot wide gravel drip trench or a walkway? Have they got a plan?
They're only interested in removing the vegetation so they can view the back sides of their building to keep an eye on them. They're what's down, just whatever the soil and ground conditions are now is what's being proposed. So there's no planting back there. These sides of the building were hidden, since the building was built and the trees grew back in. So it's not visible from the park or from anywhere else, anywhere else.
Yeah, I guess I'd be a little bit concerned that they will fill in with invasives if they take out the trees that are there now. And I don't know what the trees are. They could be tree of heaven and be invasive already. So I'd like to see, if we take down the trees, that there be some maintenance plan to keep the invasives down in the future.
Yeah, so the plan that they let me know is that they would maintain that by probably just weed whacking the 3 to 7 foot area as part of their regular maintenance. I mean, it's well manicured, the rest of the area. I mean, some things have overgrown, but the rest is well manicured. So they have a landscaping company, and they would just, once this gets taken care of, they would just send them down as needed. The only thing that would probably grow in this area, and it's along the stream, would be the Japanese knotweed, because that was really going gangbusters on that side. In the back, it's a little bit too shaded, and it's very wet. And there was an area that there was no growth of any kind, and I think that's because there was some sort of rock base behind the building at one time. So kind of in this area here, there's not much ground cover, just dirt and stone, and the stone is filled for the most part with mud and leaves.
Okay.
So I think I accurately showed you the trees that I saw. There weren't many. When he called me, I was very concerned, but there weren't many trees. And this one here is a dead tree.
Do we have any proposals for an answer for Chuck? Is it administrative that Chuck can manage it, or do we need them to come for an RDA?
And what's the width? That seems
Mhm.
administrative. So if I was going to give an administrative approval, you might say, you know, I don't know what Tony's going to say, but let's say 4 feet would be an administrative approval with this volunteer growth up against the building. But if they want to expand that to allow for some bigger projects, they'd come back to the Conservation Commission with an RDA or something to that effect.
I'd be comfortable with that, like 3-4 feet seems reasonable, but much more than that, I think I would expect if it was a residential, I would expect something. So I think it seems fair that if they want to go more, like you're saying, so 4 foot, fine, is a minor project, but if they want more than that, then it should be an RDA. I'd be comfortable with that.
Right. And just the reason is because those trees that grow basically right at the foundation, it's going to mess up the foundation for sure. These aren't trees that are far away, just stretching over. This has just been totally left alone, grown in.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm okay with this administrative approach too, but you know, Chuck, you know your business, but I want some kind of assurance that they're really going to be maintaining this in the future. Because after all, this happened through neglect. And you need to be persuaded that they're going to change their ways, essentially. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Sure. So I'm going to get a plan and a narrative from the owner, and I'm going to meet the company that's going to do the work out there. That would be part of the process that I've already asked for the plan and the narrative. And he said that, you know, the commission could come down and take a look, and he'll be happily bring you back there. I wouldn't do it because there is that poison ivy, although Brian says he's immune to it.
Just for
If you
reference,
jinx me, I'm gonna come back to haunt you.
the boardwalks that they build, the trails in the woods, are those 3 feet wide?
4 feet wide.
Those boardwalks are 4 feet wide. Okay, so I would say that seems like a reasonable width to clear away from the house, the building.
Mhm.
That feels, you know, the width of one of those boardwalks feels like an appropriate size to me.
I think the
Okay.
limit, yeah,
Um,
sure, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish, I'm sorry.
I would think that, you know, we would call the edge, the 4 foot, a limit of work, and any work beyond that, closer to the stream, of course, including, you know, any kind of vegetation removal, invasive vegetation removal, would need further approval from the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Are you going to have them put down any erosion control, or do you think that won't be needed because they're just cutting vegetation?
You know, this is, you know, except for right where you start walking in, it's fairly open except for what's grown against the wall. Like everything stretches out to the sun. So they're all those trees. So there's not a lot there. And in the back, there's a berm. But on the side, they're not really getting that close. And there's 2 trees, so they cut them, they pull them out, and that's, so I said, no, I would not. I don't think it's needed.
Okay, it's 5 after 10. Are we good on that? Do we? need a vote?
There's one thing I'm still a little hung up on, and I'm looking at our 5 examples of what a minor project includes, and I'm not seeing where this fits into one of those 5 examples.
That's why it's coming to the commission.
Yeah.
So why is it different from, I mean, if this was out in the open and we were taking down 8 trees, right? It's over the 4 limit that I get to allow. It's automatically an RDA. But, you know, we were talking about this before, you know, you can put a reasonably sized house with a septic system in a riverfront and allow enough open space to maintain it. So based on this being able to maintain the side of, you know, the building here, I thought that I would bring it to the commission, understanding that there's no way around it. I mean, you need to open up this area, but you're right, it's not part of the minor project permit,
Unless it's an existing landscaped area.
which is definitely
It's
not.
a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was at some time. The trees you've marked are all DBH 6 inches or higher?
Lower.
Okay,
There's
Cut.
only that one willow tree, which branch broke, which I would estimate 18 to 22 inches. And it's actually on the roof.
so those are not really considered trees because we don't really count trees unless they're 6 inches or bigger. I mean, I know they're the same species, but you know, when we're asking people to,
I'm going to say
the
4 would be
engineer
counted as
planned them.
trees plus the dead one. And
Okay.
then the rest of them are quite small. And it wasn't Norway maple. It was mostly, yeah, it might have been. So what would we have out there? We had walnut. I think I saw a walnut tree. I think I saw the no tree of heaven and an ash tree. And the only other one I think I ID'd was I
You
can't
see
think of
an
the
elm
name.
back there?
Sorry.
Because I see a lot of elms around that park.
Do you really? I
Yeah.
don't think it was an elm.
red
But
maple. I think
Yeah.
it might be good habitat for red maple.
Or Norway maple.
yeah. Nope. I didn't see those. I'm sorry I can't think of the other tree. I'll get it as soon as we move on. But
Well, if they're under 6-inch DBH, except for 3 of them, then that's less than 5 trees. So if, you know, that would be my argument to say we could let Chuck do this as a minor project permit. But if you want to put it on the next agenda as an RDA and
oh no, they're
way.
gonna. It won't be on the next agenda. Yeah. If it's an RDA, they'll have to do that themselves and figure out when they can put the paperwork together and get it to me. So it'll be in the future.
we
You know,
have
it's a good point.
motion?
We want to be consistent, but often we don't. I mean, if it was like Burlington, we might have a lot of examples of this coming up, and we might have some background of how to handle this situation because there's a lot more, you know, businesses out there that may have volunteer vegetation growing along them. So we might have some more examples, but here, this might be the first one that I ever saw come up. And I'm surprised about this place. It does look shocking. It looks like it would be really forested, but it's not. It's surprisingly empty and mostly Japanese knotweed has grown in. And just those trees that survived and some saplings.
Anyone with strong opinions?
I
Bill,
think-
you got a legal take on this one?
Yeah.
I don't, because as Chuck was pointing out, it's an unusual situation. You have an insurance company involved. You have a very large limb downtown on top of the building. I think these special conditions give you some flexibility, at least as I see it. And you look at the totality of the situation, I think it invites flexibility. And remember, you'd need a community member with a very specific concern to come forward and object to doing something that allows the business owner to keep their insurance, to remove trees that are invading the foundation, etc. So at least as I see it, you have some flexibility here. So
Walter,
Don't insurance companies usually have inspectors to come out, look at the situation and make recommendations as to what should be done to maintain the insurance?
I'm not sure, but I know the insurance company came out and told them, they gave them a list of things that they want completed and probably a time frame too, but I don't think it's in the next couple of months. Or maybe it is in the next couple of months. And that would be their time frame for a permit and the work. So they did say, you know, they didn't cover the roof. It punctured the roof. They didn't cover it because that tree and all these other trees should be cleared out of the way because they're leaning over the roof.
Chuck, I would say with what you've described, I'm okay with a minor permit.
I
right,
don't want
Tony.
another tree
Appreciate
to
that.
fall on their roof and have them have a higher expense because we dilly-dallied.
And possibly more damage to the resource areas.
Yeah, once it's opened up, you can walk out there and definitely walk out there. We're probably gonna have another project right here, but again, you'll understand that I'm trying to be as accurate as I can with this description that it looks like it would be very forested and thickly grown in, but it's just Japanese knotweed.
Okay. It's now 10:15. So are we in agreement that Chuck can deal with this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Tony.
Now I move to adjourn.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Tony, yes.
I
We
make a
have a
motion to
second.
adjourn the meeting at 10:16 PM.
Seconded and thirded.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye.